The Academy of Stars floated in the empty space between solar systems like a giant crystal flower. Its walls were made of special glass that could stop anything from getting through, even the deadly rays from distant suns. Inside, thousands of young beings from different worlds studied together, learning about science, space travel, and how to get along with aliens. Hannah pressed her face against the cold window of her dorm room, watching small ships arrive and leave the academy. 3 months had passed since she left Earth, but she still felt amazed every time she saw the view. Stars stretched in every direction, some so bright they hurt to look at, others just tiny dots of light in the darkness. Her room was small but comfortable. The academy had built it to work for many different types of aliens. The air was a mix that most species could breathe, though some still needed special masks. The gravity was set to standard level, which felt light to Hannah after growing up on Earth. Sometimes she caught herself jumping too high or moving too fast, which made her alien classmates stare. A soft beep from her door told her someone was outside. Hannah opened it to find Park Jin-ho holding 2 cups of something that smelled like coffee, but wasn't quite right. His dark hair stuck up in weird directions, and his academy uniform looked like he had slept in it. "Morning," Jin-ho said, handing her a cup. "Ready for another fun day of advanced physics with Instructor Tai?" Hannah took a sip and made a face. The academy's version of coffee tasted like metal and sadness. "I don't think that guy likes humans." "Very much. He doesn't like anyone very much," Jin-ho replied. "But yeah, he seems extra annoyed when we ask questions." They walked through the long hallways toward the classroom sections. The academy was huge, with different areas for different types of aliens. Some parts had thicker air for species that came from heavy atmosphere worlds. Other sections were kept very cold or very hot. The human section was considered pretty normal by academy standards. Other students moved through the halls around them. Hannah still felt surprised when she saw them. There were the Zephyrhites, tall and thin with blue-gray skin, who wore breathing masks because they needed different air. They moved like dancers, taking long, flowing steps. The Chitauri looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs, with big compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Their skin had a metallic shine, and they made soft clicking sounds. When they talked to each other, there were dozens of other species too. Some looked almost human except for strange colors or extra arms. Others were so different that Hannah couldn't figure out how they even moved around. All of them were supposed to be the smartest young beings from their worlds. "There's Kim Nara," Jin-ho pointed down the hall. Nara was walking toward them, looking much more awake than either of them felt. Her uniform was perfectly neat, and her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She had arrived at the academy just 2 weeks ago, fresh from the lunar colonies around Earth. Unlike Hannah and Jin-ho, who had been struggling with their classes, Nara seemed to understand everything right away. "You two look terrible," Nara said. When she reached them, "Did you stay up all night again?" "I was studying stellar cartography," Hannah said. "Those star maps make no sense. How am I supposed to remember the locations of 10,000 solar systems?" "You memorize the patterns," Nara replied, like it was obvious. "The trade routes, the political boundaries, the resource locations. It's just like learning geography back home, except in 3 dimensions." Jin-ho stared at her. "Just like geography?" "Nara, we're talking about mapping an entire galaxy." Before Nara could answer, they reached the classroom. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they walked into the large, round room. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars outside. Rows of desks curved around a central platform where Instructor Tai would give his lessons. Tai was already there, standing perfectly still in front of a large holographic display. He was an Exeran, which meant his body was made of some kind of living crystal. He was tall and thin, with sharp angles everywhere. His skin changed colors based on his mood. Though he usually stayed a cold blue-white color, that meant he was thinking about serious things. When he got angry, which happened a lot, he turned red-orange like fire. The three humans took their usual seats near the back of the room. Around them, other students were settling in. A group of Zephyrhites sat together on the left side, there, breathing masks making soft, whooshing sounds. The Chitauri students clustered near the front, their compound eyes reflecting the light from the holographic display. "Today, we will study momentum transfer," Vextai announced. His voice was strange, like someone speaking through a crystal glass. The relationship between mass, velocity, and impact force. He touched something on his control panel, and a metal plate appeared on the platform next to him. It was about the size of a dinner plate and looked very thick and strong. "Observe," Vextai said. He raised one crystalline hand and struck the metal plate with what looked like a gentle tap. The plate dented deeply, the metal bending inward like someone had hit it with a hammer. Several students gasped. A few Zephyrhites whistled in surprise through their breathing masks. "Even a restrained strike carries substantial energy," Vextai continued. "This is due to the gravitational conditions of my homeworld. Nexera has 3 times the standard gravity, so my species developed much greater physical strength than most." Hannah found herself getting sleepy. She had been up until 4 in the morning trying to understand star charts, and the warm classroom air wasn't helping. Her eyes started to close. "The formula is simple," Vextai was saying. "Force equals mass times acceleration. A small increase in either factor results in a dramatic increase in total force." Hannah's head started to nod forward. She caught herself and sat up straighter, but her eyes felt so heavy. Next to her, Jinho was taking notes, his pen moving quickly across his tablet. Nara sat perfectly straight, paying complete attention. "When two objects collide," Vextai continued, "energy must be transferred. The stronger object will always dominate the weaker one. This is a fundamental law of physics that applies throughout the universe." The instructor's eyes moved across the classroom, checking to see if students were paying attention. His crystalline features shifted slightly when he saw Hannah starting to doze again. "Perhaps," Vextai said, his voice getting colder, "some students believe they are too advanced for basic physics." A few students turned to look at Hannah, who was now fighting to keep her eyes open. She didn't notice the attention. The combination of too little sleep and the warm classroom was winning the battle. Against her willpower, Vextai's skin began to shift from blue-white to a slight orange color. In Nexeran culture, orange meant irritation. The Deathworld specimens appear to require more direct instruction methods. The term Deathworld specimens made several students uncomfortable. It was technically correct. Earth was classified as a Deathworld by the Galactic Confederation, but it sounded rude when said that way. Jinho looked up from his notes with a frown. Nara's eyes narrowed slightly, but Hannah didn't hear any of it. She had finally lost the battle with sleep. Her head tilted forward, and soft breathing sounds indicated she was completely unconscious. Vextai's color shifted to a brighter orange. Around the room, other students began to sense tension building. This was not going to end well. Instructor Vextai stood perfectly still for several seconds, watching Hannah sleep in her chair. His crystalline skin continued to shift colors, moving from orange to a deeper red that meant real anger was building. Around the classroom, students began to notice the tension. Conversation stopped. The Chitauri stopped their soft clicking sounds. Even the whooshing from the Zephyrite breathing masks seemed quieter. "Student Lee Hannah," Vextai said, his crystal voice cutting through the silence. Hannah didn't move. Her head was tilted to one side, and she was breathing slowly and steadily. She looked completely peaceful, which only made the instructor more angry. Jinho reached over and gently touched Hannah's arm, trying to wake her up without making a scene. "Hannah," he whispered. "Hey, wake up." But Hannah was deeply asleep. 3 hours of rest in the past 2 days had finally caught up with her. Her body had decided it was time to shut down, and no amount of gentle nudging was going to change that vexed eye. Color shifted to bright red-orange. In the Galactic Academy system, instructors had the authority to discipline students who showed disrespect during lessons. Physical correction was normal and expected. Most alien species were fragile enough that even a light touch from an instructor would get their attention without causing harm. "It appears," Vexed Eye announced to the class, "that theoretical demonstrations are insufficient for some species." He stepped down from his platform and began walking toward the back of the room where the humans sat. His crystalline feet made soft clicking sounds on the floor. Students in the rows he passed turned to watch him move. The tension in the room grew thicker. Nara sat perfectly still, but her eyes were locked on the approaching instructor. Something about his body language worried her. As someone who had grown up in the lunar colonies, she had learned to read danger signs in low-gravity environments where small mistakes could be deadly. Right now, every instinct she had was telling her something bad was about to happen. "Student." "Lee Hannah," Vexed Eye said again, now standing directly next to Hannah's desk. Still no response. Hannah had shifted slightly in her sleep, but she remained completely unconscious. A small smile played on her lips, like she was having a pleasant dream about something far away from physics class. Vexed Eye looked around the classroom. Every student was watching now. The Zephyrhites had stopped moving entirely, which was unusual for their species. The Chitauri were absolutely motionless, their compound eyes fixed on the scene. Other alien species throughout the room had turned in their seats to get a better view. Since student Lee Hannah appears uninterested in learning through observation, Vexed Eye announced, perhaps a practical demonstration of momentum transfer will prove more educational. Jinho felt his stomach drop. He knew that tone of voice from teachers back on Earth. It was the sound adults made when they were about to do something they thought would teach you a lesson. "Instructor," he started to say, but Vexed Eye was already moving. In Nexran culture, physical discipline was quick and direct. You delivered a sharp correction. The student learned their lesson, and everyone moved on. It was efficient and effective. The problem was that Nexran ideas about physical correction were based on Nexran biology. And Nexrans were crystal-based. Life forms who had evolved under 3 times Earth's gravity. Vexed Eye drew back his hand and delivered what he considered a light disciplinary tap to Hannah's shoulder. In his mind, it was barely a touch, just enough force to wake her up and get her attention. He had used similar corrections on hundreds of students over his teaching career, and no one had ever been seriously hurt. The impact hit Hannah like a truck. The force lifted her completely out of her chair and sent her sliding sideways across her desk. Books and tablets scattered in every direction. Her water bottle flew through the air and hit the wall with a loud crack. Hannah's body rolled off the far side of the desk and hit the floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent classroom. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody made any sound at all. The Zephyrite students began making high-pitched whistling noises through their breathing masks, sounds of alarm and distress. The Chitauri started vibrating, their wings buzzing with anxiety. Students from other species pushed back in their chairs, trying to get farther away from what they had just witnessed. Vexed Eye stared at the place where Hannah had been sitting, his crystalline features shifting rapidly through different colors. Purple for confusion, green for shock, white for complete disbelief. He had just delivered what should have been a gentle correction, and it had resulted in what looked like serious violence. Medical assistance, he started to say, reaching for his communication device. Jinho was already moving, jumping out of his chair to check on Hannah. His face was pale with worry and anger. "Hannah, are you okay?" Nara stood up more slowly, her expression calm, but her eyes very sharp. She was watching everything carefully, taking in details that others might miss. The way Hannah had moved when she was hit, the sound her body had made when it hit the floor, the distance she had traveled. On the other side of the room, some students were starting to panic. A group of Zephyrites were whistling to each other in their own language, probably discussing whether they should call for help. The Chitauri were clicking rapidly, which usually meant they were scared or confused. "I didn't intend ... Vextai said, his voice much quieter now. His skin was cycling through colors of shame and regret. The force calculation should have been. He trailed off, staring at his own hand like he didn't understand how it could have caused so much damage. In all his years of teaching, he had never seriously hurt a student. Nexuran instructors prided themselves on precise control of their strength. Behind Hannah's desk, there was no movement at all. No sound. No sign that she was conscious or even alive. The silence stretched on, becoming more terrible with each passing second. Students who had been watching with curiosity were now genuinely frightened. Some were already reaching for their emergency communication devices. Vextai took a step forward, intending to check on Hannah himself, but stopped when Jinho held up a hand. "Don't," Jinho said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I think you've done enough." The instructor's crystalline skin flushed deep purple, the color of shame among his people. "I calculated the force based on standard fragility measurements for Deathworld species," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "The impact should have been minimal." "Maybe your calculations were wrong," Nara said quietly. Around the room, other students were starting to whisper among themselves. The word Deathworld was being repeated in several different languages. Everyone knew that species from Deathworlds were supposed to be fragile and dependent on technology for survival. That's what all the textbooks said. That's what the Galactic Confederation databases indicated. But if that was true, then what they had just witnessed might have been much worse than a simple classroom accident. It might have been a fatal mistake. From behind the desk, there was a soft sound. Not a moan of pain or a cry for help, but something completely unexpected. A quiet, satisfied sigh. Everyone in the classroom held their breath and listened. Jinho, who had been moving toward Hannah's position, stopped in the middle of the aisle. Nara tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to figure out what she had just heard. Then came another sound. A soft grunt, like someone stretching after a good nap. "Oh, wow," Hannah's voice came from behind the desk, sounding perfectly normal. That actually felt really good. The silence in the classroom became even deeper, if that was possible. Students who had been whispering stopped mid-sentence. The Zephyrites' breathing masks made no sound at all. Even the quiet hum of the room's air circulation system seemed to pause. Hannah's head appeared above the desk as she sat up. Her hair was messy from sleeping and then being knocked around, but her face looked completely normal. No cuts, no bruises, no signs of pain at all. She rolled her shoulders back and forth, like someone working out a muscle cramp. "I've had a crick in my neck all morning from falling asleep at my study desk," she said, still moving her shoulders around. "Thanks for that, instructor. I feel much better now." Every eye in the room was fixed on her. The Chitauri had stopped their vibrating completely. Several Zephyrite students had their faces pressed against their breathing masks, staring in complete disbelief. Vextai stood frozen in place, his crystalline body cycling through colors so fast it was hard to follow. Purple to green to white, to blue to orange, and back again. His species didn't have facial expressions like humans did, but his rapidly changing colors showed total confusion. You should be ... double quotes, he started to say, then stopped. His voice sounded strange, like he was having trouble making words. The impact force was calculated at... The structural damage to your skeletal system should be... Hana looked at him with genuine puzzled expression. What? That little tap? She stood up, brushing dust off her academy uniform. Sir, I think you might be overestimating your strength a bit. No offense, but I've gotten harder hits from my little sister during sparring practice back home. A Zephyrite student in the front. Ro made a whistling sound that probably meant something like impossible in their language. One of the Chitauri started clicking so rapidly, it sounded like static electricity. Jin Ho was staring at Hana with his mouth slightly open. He had seen the force of that hit. He had watched her body fly across the desk and slam into the floor. By every law of physics he understood, she should be seriously injured. But there she was, standing up like nothing had happened. Are you sure you're okay? He asked, still not quite believing what he was seeing. I'm fine, Hana replied, still looking confused about why everyone was acting so strange. Why is everyone staring at me like that? Nara was watching the scene with intense interest. Unlike Jinho, she didn't look surprised at all. Instead, she looked like someone watching a puzzle piece fall into place. Should we tell them? She asked quietly, speaking to Jinho but looking at Hana. Tell us what? Vextai demanded. His color had settled on bright orange now, which meant he was getting frustrated along with being confused. The instructor moved to his control panel and began pulling up holographic displays. Numbers and charts appeared in the air around him. Biological data, impact calculations, structural analysis reports. According to all galactic databases, he said, his crystal voice getting higher with stress, humans are classified as a fragile Deathworld species. High mortality rates, brief lifespans, susceptible to minor environmental changes, dependent on technology for survival in hostile conditions. He gestured at the data floating around him. Your bone density is listed as standard. Your muscle. My SS is within normal ranges for your size. Your skin thickness is actually below average compared to most galactic species. Hana walked around her desk to get a better look at the holographic information. Huh, she said, reading through the charts. Whoever wrote this clearly never actually met a human. What do you mean? Vextai asked. Well, for starters, we're not fragile, Hana replied. I mean, sure, we die easier than some species, but that's not because we're weak. It's because our planet keeps trying to kill us, and sometimes it succeeds. More students were starting to lean forward in their seats, trying to hear better. This was turning into the most interesting physics class any of them had ever attended. Explain, Vextai said. His color had shifted to blue now, which meant he was trying to understand something complex. Okay, look, Hana said, pointing it. One of the holographic charts. This says humans have high mortality rates, right? That's true. But it's not because we're delicate little flowers who break if you look at us wrong. She started counting on her fingers. We have weather that can freeze you solid or cook you alive, sometimes in the same day. Earthquakes that can knock down entire cities. Storms that move with the force of nuclear weapons. Poisonous plants and animals everywhere you look. A Zephyrite. Student raised one long, thin arm. But surely your technology protects you from these things? Hana laughed. Some of it, sometimes. But you can't technology your way out of everything. When a hurricane comes through, or a wildfire, or a flood, you just have to be tough enough to survive it. Jinyo was starting to grin now as he realized where this conversation was going. Should I tell them about the Australian wildlife? Let's not traumatize them, Nara said dryly. Vextai was still staring at his data. his crystalline features shifting through different configurations as he tried to process what he was hearing. But the classification system indicates that Deathworld species become weak due to their hostile environments. Whoever made that classification system got it exactly backwards, Hana replied. Our hostile environment didn't make us weak. It made us incredibly tough. We had to be, or we would have gone extinct millions of years ago. She gestured around the room. I mean, look at this place. Perfect temperature, perfect air mixture, perfect gravity, no dangerous weather, no predators, no diseases. It's like a safest environment in the galaxy. And you find this disappointing? Asked a Chitauri student, their compound eyes reflecting surprise. Not disappointing, Hana said. Just ... easy, I guess. When you grow up in a place where everything is trying to kill you, a place like this feels almost boring. The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Not the shocked quiet of students watching what they thought was a terrible accident, but the thoughtful quiet of people trying to understand something completely new. Vex Tai slowly turned away from his holographic displays to look at Hana again. So when I struck you with what I calculated as significant force, you gave me a pretty good massage, Hana finished. Seriously, my neck feels great now. Vex Tai stood perfectly still for almost a full minute, his crystalline body cycling through colors that none of the students had ever seen before. His mind was trying to process information that went against everything he had learned in his decades of teaching. Finally, he moved back to his control panel and began pulling up more files. Not just human biological data this time, but geological surveys, atmospheric readings, and environmental reports from Earth. The holographic displays multiplied around him until the air was filled with floating charts and graphs. This cannot be accurate, he muttered, his crystal fingers moving frantically across the controls. Deathworld designation implies environmental hostility creates weakness. Evolutionary pressure toward technology dependence, ... the data told. A different story. Surface temperature variations of over 60 degrees Celsius in some regions. Atmospheric storms with wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Seismic activity that regularly measured above 7 points on the galactic scale. Volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, ice ages. Your planet, Vex Tai said slowly, experiences more environmental extremes in a single year than most worlds see in a century. That's just Tuesday on Earth, Jinho replied. He couldn't help himself anymore. The shocked expressions on his classmates' faces were too entertaining. Want to hear about what we call pleasant weather? Before anyone could answer, he stood up and walked to the front of the class. Okay, show of hands. How many of you would consider a day with temperatures around 0 degrees Celsius to be nice weather? Not a single alien student raised their hand. The Zephyrite actually moved back in their seats at the thought. Right, Jinho continued. We call that jacket weather. Comfortable enough to go outside and play sports. Kids build snowmen in it. We have festivals and celebrations in weather that would kill most of you in minutes. A Chitauri student's compound eyes focused on him intently. Surely you wear protective suits in such conditions? Nope. Regular clothes. Sometimes just a coat. Jinho grinned. And that's not even cold weather. Really cold weather is when it gets down to negative 20 or 30 degrees. That's when we put on our heavy jackets. Several students began making distressed sounds in their own languages. The Zephyrite were whistling in what sounded like panic. One of the smaller alien species actually got up and moved to a desk farther away from the humans. The temperature ranges alone should have made complex life impossible, Vex Tai said, still staring at his data. Yet you developed not just intelligence, but advanced civilization. Because we're stubborn, Nara said, finally joining the conversation. She had been quiet until now, but something about the instructor's confusion seemed to amuse her. Humans, don't give up. When the environment tries to kill us, we adapt. When disasters destroy our cities, we build them again. When diseases try to wipe us out, we find cures. She walked over to stand next to Junho and Hana. The thing about growing up on a Deathworld isn't that it makes you weak, it's that it makes you refuse to quit. But your mortality rates, a Zephyrite student whistled through their breathing mask. The databases show that humans die much more frequently than other species. Because our planet keeps trying to murder us, Hana explained patiently. But that doesn't mean the ones who survive are fragile. It means we're the ones who are tough enough to make it. Vextai was pulling up more files now, comparing human data to other species throughout the galaxy. His crystalline features kept shifting as he discovered one surprising fact after another. Your muscle density is actually above average for your body weight, he said, sounding confused. Your bone structure shows adaptation to high-stress environments. Your cardiovascular systems are built for extreme endurance. Well, yeah, Gino said. You kind of have to be in good shape when your morning jog might include running away from predators, surviving a sudden storm, or climbing over earthquake damage. Predators? Asked a small, furry alien student in the middle of the room. On your homeworld? Oh, tons of them, Hana replied cheerfully. Big cats that can run faster than most ground vehicles. Bears that weigh as much as a small spacecraft. Sharks in the oceans. Poisonous snakes, spiders, jellyfish. Insects that carry deadly diseases. The furry student made a squeaking sound and slid down in their chair. And that's just the animals, Nara added. There are also poisonous plants everywhere. Some of them look exactly like safe plants, so you have to memorize which ones will kill you. There are fungi that can dissolve your lungs if you breathe the spores. Bacteria in the water that can shut down your organs. By now, several alien students were looking genuinely horrified. A group of Chitauri had clustered together, clicking nervously among themselves. The Zephyrites were whistling in what sounded like distressed conversation through their breathing masks. How do you survive childhood on such a world? Asked an alien student with 4 arms and purple skin. Very carefully, all 3 humans said at the same time, then laughed at their synchronization. But that's the point, Hana continued. The kids who make it to adulthood are the ones who learn to be tough, smart, and quick. Natural selection in action. Vextai had stopped looking at his data displays and was now staring directly at the 3 humans. So the environmental hostility didn't create dependence on technology. It created biological and psychological adaptations for extreme resilience. Exactly, Nara said. We use technology to make things easier, not because we need it to survive. Most humans could live for weeks or months with nothing but basic tools, even in hostile environments. Months? The 4-armed student sounded incredulous. Sure, Gino replied. There are humans who go into the wilderness for fun, with just a knife and some basic supplies, and stay there for extended periods. We call it camping. For fun? Several students said at once. Some people think it's relaxing, Hana explained. Getting away from civilization, living off the land, dealing with whatever nature throws at you. It's like a vacation for us. The classroom had gone completely quiet again. Students were staring at the humans like they were looking at some kind of bizarre alien creatures, which, from their perspective, they were. Vextai's crystalline body had settled into a steady blue color, which meant he was in deep thought. I believe, he said slowly, that the Galactic Confederation may have fundamentally misunderstood what the term Deathworld means when applied to species evolution. How so? Asked a Zephyrite student. We assumed that harsh environments would create weak species that survive through technology and cooperation, the instructor explained. But in the case of humans, The harsh environment created incredibly strong individuals who then developed technology and cooperation on top of their natural resilience. So instead of technology replacing natural toughness, Nara said, we added technology to natural toughness, which makes you ... Vextai paused, his color shifting to what might have been awe. Which makes you perhaps the most formidable species in the known galaxy. The three humans looked at each other with surprise. They had never thought of themselves as particularly formidable. To them, they were just normal people trying to get through their classes at an alien academy. I don't know about formidable, Hana said. We're just ... us. The rest of the physics class turned into something completely different from what anyone had expected. Instead of learning about momentum transfer and impact calculations, the room became filled with questions, stories, and a kind of cultural exchange that none of the students had ever experienced before. Started when a brave Zephyrite student raised one thin arm and asked, "Are all humans as resilient as Lee Hana?" Hannah looked around at her human classmates and shrugged. "I'm pretty average, actually. You should meet some of our athletes, or construction workers, or soldiers." "Construction workers?" asked the four-armed purple student. "People who build things," Gino explained. "They work outside in all kinds of weather, lifting heavy materials, using dangerous tools, working at great heights. Some of them do it for decades without serious injury. In variable weather conditions?" asked a Chitauri student, their compound eyes reflecting fascination. "Rain, snow, extreme heat, high winds. Doesn't matter," Nara replied. "The work has to get done, so they adapt." Vextai had been quietly listening to this exchange while continuing to review data on his holographic displays. Now he looked up from the charts and graphs floating around him. "Student Park Jino, you mentioned soldiers. Are you referring to organized military forces?" "Yeah," Jino said. "Groups of people trained to fight in wars, protect territory, that kind of thing. And these soldiers operate in hostile environments without technological support?" "Well, they have some technology," Gino admitted. "But a lot of their training is about surviving and fighting when that technology fails or isn't available. They learn to operate in extreme weather, dangerous terrain, with limited food and water." The alien students were starting to look genuinely worried now. The idea of beings who were trained specifically for combat, who could survive in harsh conditions, and who came from a world that had already made them incredibly tough, was clearly disturbing to species that had evolved in gentler environments. "How many soldiers does your species have?" asked a small, nervous-looking alien with tentacles instead of arms. The three humans looked at each other. "That single quotes S ... actually a complicated question," Nara said slowly. "Most human societies have professional military forces," Hana explained. "But in a real emergency, almost any adult human can become a fighter if they need to. We all learn basic survival skills growing up. All of you?" The tentacled student's voice got higher with worry. "Pretty much," Gino confirmed. "I mean, not everyone becomes a soldier, but most humans know how to handle dangerous situations. How to find food and water, how to make shelter, how to defend themselves and their families." Vextai's crystalline body was cycling through colors again, but slower this time, like he was thinking carefully about each new piece of information. "So your entire species consists of beings who are naturally resilient, trained in survival skills, and capable of violence when necessary. When you put it like that, it sounds kind of scary," Hana said with a laugh. "But we're not violent by nature. We just ... we don't give up easily. And we protect the people we care about." "What about your scientists and artists?" asked a Zephyrite student. "Surely your non-military population is less formidable?" Nara grinned. "You'd be surprised. A lot of our scientists worked in extreme environments. Deep ocean research, Arctic. Exploration, space missions. And artists? Some of them travel to war zones to document what's happening, or climb mountains to get the perfect photograph. They choose to go to dangerous places? Several alien students said this at once, in different languages. Humans are curious, Gino explained. We want to see new things, learn new facts, explore places no one has been before, even if those places might kill us. A Chitauri student clicked thoughtfully. This explains why your species was so eager to join the galactic community. You see space travel as exploration rather than a dangerous necessity. Exactly, Hannah said, looking excited that someone understood. When we found out there were other intelligent species in the galaxy, we didn't think, oh no, dangerous aliens. We thought, amazing, new friends to meet and new places to explore. Vex Tai had moved away from his data displays and was now standing in the center of the classroom, looking at each student in turn. I believe I owe all of you an apology, he said, particularly the human students. Why? Hannah asked. Because I have been operating under completely incorrect assumptions about your species, the instructor replied. I treated you as fragile beings who needed to be handled carefully, when in fact you are among the most resilient students I have ever taught. His crystalline skin shifted to a warm golden color that the students had never seen before. In my species, gold represents respect and admiration. I am showing this color because I have learned something important today. What's that? Asked a student from the back of the room. That sometimes the things that make a species appear weak in our databases are actually the things that make them incredibly strong in reality. Vextai gestured to the holographic displays that were still floating around the room. Humans have high mortality rates, but the ones who survive are exceptionally tough. They have short lifespans, but they accomplish more in those brief years than most species do in centuries. They come from a hostile world, but that hostility created beings who can thrive anywhere. The alien students were nodding now, beginning to understand. The Zephyrites were whistling in what sounded like agreement. The Chitauri had stopped their nervous clicking and were focusing intently on the instructor's words. So what does this mean for our class? Asked the four-armed purple student. Vextai's golden color brightened. It means I am assigning a new project. Each of you will prepare a presentation about how your homeworld shaped your species' evolution and capabilities. Not just the basic facts from the databases, but the real truth about what makes your people who they are. Students around the room began talking excitedly among themselves. This was the kind of assignment that could actually be interesting, instead of just memorizing formulas and equations. And student Lee Hannah, Vextai said, turning to face her directly. Yes, instructor? I apologize for striking you. Even though you were not harmed, my action was based on ignorance and poor judgment. Hannah smiled. No problem, sir. Though next time you want to demonstrate force transfer, maybe pick a target that won't confuse your calculations. The crystalline. Instructor's laughter sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Indeed, though I suspect this has been the most educational physics lesson I have taught in decades. As the class period ended and students began gathering their materials, the atmosphere in the room was completely different from how it had started. The alien students were no longer looking at the humans with casual indifference or mild curiosity. Instead, there was a new kind of awareness in their expressions, not fear exactly, but a deeper understanding of what they were dealing with. The three humans walked toward the door together, still somewhat amazed by how their normal Tuesday had turned into an interspecies revelation. Think the other instructors are going to find out about this? Jinho asked. Probably, Nara replied. Word spreads fast in a place like this. Good, Hannah said, adjusting her backpack. Maybe now they'll stop talking about us like we're made of glass. As they left the classroom, they could hear other students behind them having excited conversations in multiple languages. The word Deathworld was being repeated frequently, but now it carried a very different meaning than it had at the beginning of the class. Outside in the hallway, other students who hadn't been in the physics class began to notice something different. The way alien students looked at the humans as they passed, the respectful distance that some species now maintained, the curious glances and whispered conversations that followed in their wake. Word was already spreading through the Academy of Stars. The fragile Deathworld species weren't fragile at all. They were something much more interesting and much more impressive. They were survivors who had turned their survival skills into a way of life. And now everyone knew it.